Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our three-day Metals and Mining Conference. Our next live presentation of the day is from Power Metal Resources. Please note, you may submit questions for the presenter in the box to the left of the slides. You can also view a company's availability for a one-on-one meeting by clicking Book a Meeting in the top toolbar. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Sean Wade, Chief Executive Officer of Power Metal Resources, which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol POWMF and on the AIM under the symbol POW. Welcome back, Sean.
Hi, Greg. Thank you very much. And thank you very much indeed for having me. And thank you for all those watching for joining us this morning. It's a great pleasure to present the Power Metal Resources story. As Greg mentioned, we are listed on the AIM segment of the London Stock Exchange on the OTCQB, and very proud to represent the United Kingdom and at this conference. I want to talk about what we would regard as a proven incubation model in natural resources, early stage exploration in particular. I'm going to just dwell very quickly on this initial slide because it shows a share price 14.5 pence and a number that we focus on and which I would like investors to just focus on for a moment, which is what we call shareholders' funds per share. That can also be regarded as net asset value per share. Now, this is effectively a sum of the parts, if you will, based on some of the listed investments, but also carrying value in the book value of some of our unlisted investments. And as it currently stands at the moment, our shares are trading at a fairly significant discount to that number. Now, that's an important metric for us, and it's the metric under which we wish, hopefully, to be judged, and what I hope that investors will take away from this. Now, if we move into the presentation, you'll see some disclaimer information at the beginning of the slides. We want to talk a little bit more about what an early stage exploration and project incubator actually means. We're focused on metals exploration with a principal focus on district scale potential assets across a global portfolio. Now, this includes energy-based and precious metals, and it's a global portfolio represented in North America, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Australia, and Africa. And when I say Africa, I mean specifically Botswana in Southern Africa. Our objective is to develop projects either through strategic joint ventures or internally until we're ready to crystallize that value through either an outright sale or a separate listing on a stock exchange, crystallizing that value for our investors. And I'm going to go ahead and show how we've recently done that and what other projects that we have in store in that respect. But just before I do that, to talk about how the project incubator model actually works. Now, a lot of investors, I think, on this call will be familiar with Dundee Corporation, potentially, certainly Sprott, and it's a similar model that we're undertaking here at Power Metal. So starting with the exploration phase, we acquire projects. This can be either through earn-in agreements with existing license holders. It can be staking projects from scratch in our own right. We would then seek to conduct exploration programs, which can be very early stage, potentially geophysics, geochemistry, soil sampling, rock chip sampling, that kind of thing, or more advanced exploration, drilling, and resource definition. We look to develop those projects, and part of my role as CEO is to optimize the capital structure, not just of the group overall, but of the individual assets within the portfolio to make sure that we can maximize the opportunity. And through that, we build partner relationships with, as I mentioned, potentially existing license holders or potential partners for ongoing disposal. And then we seek to crystallize. And now we can sell the asset to a third party. We can vend out into an IPO vehicle, and we're going to show you some examples of that. Or we can look for a joint venture partner to themselves earn in to the project. So if I look at what I regard as those proven results, if I take on the left-hand side of your screen, Guardian Metal Resources. Now, this might be very well known to investors on this call because it's been a very successful share in its own right. It's listed on the OTC as well. We listed that company on the AIM market in 2023. The shares have performed extremely well. We started off with a majority percentage. We sold down via 2 tranches. As the business has developed post-IPO, the shares have performed extremely well. We realized a gain of £22.9 million, which returned around about 12 times our original investment. And this is a very, very good example of what we're trying to do. So Guardian existed wholly within the Power Metal portfolio. We acquired the principal asset, which is called Pilot Mountain, a tungsten asset in Nevada. I'll go into a little bit more detail on Guardian in a moment. We assisted, obviously, with the development. We spent some money on exploration drilling and early stage exploration. And then we were able to create sufficient amount of value such that the market more generally was happy to take an IPO of that business. And we then subsequently sold that down. We've done something similar, if you look at the middle of your screen, with First Development Resources, or FDR, as we call it. This is more recently listed in July of this year. These are assets based in Australia, 3 highly prospective copper gold projects in the west of Australia, and an attractive uranium and rare earth element project in the Northern Territory. That's a recent IPO. We've retained 43.44%. And obviously, we're hoping that that investment will do well for us and for our shareholders in the same way that Guardian Metal did. But that is now out of the stable, if you like, and is now a listed company in London in its own right. We retain a significant interest, and obviously over time we will look to dispose that value. But at the moment, we have explored, developed, and crystallized that investment. So that sits on our balance sheet as a listed investment, and you'll see that as a component of that 27 pence I talked about at the beginning. Now, a third example of our crystallization strategy is what we call Fermi Exploration Limited. Now, this is a different kind of deal. This is where we have taken a collection of highly prospective uranium assets or uranium licenses, or rather licenses that are prospective for uranium, principally based around the Athabasca Basin in Canada, where we went into a strategic joint venture with a highly respected resource investor known as UCAM. UCAM invested £10 million of cash into a joint venture in return for 70% of the equity. We retain 30%. And we have a number of high-impact drilling programs currently underway. We've completed 2, and we have 3 more to go in the current season. There's obviously a lot of weather issues in Athabasca, which has altered the timing to an extent of some of those projects. But the point that I want to get across here is that we don't just look to necessarily do IPOs. We look to crystallize our value and our interest in other ways. And this is a very good example of how we've done that. So essentially, our shareholders have a carry of 30%, but the exploration costs are being met by the investor, in this case UCAM, in the order of £10 million. So whilst obviously I've sold some of the value, I've also taken away from our shareholders the need to fund that exploration via our own balance sheet. So I'm hoping that that is a good example of how we optimize the capital structure on an asset-by-asset basis. So moving forward, I think this is probably a face that will be familiar to many of you if you're natural resource investors. Rick Rule is one of our biggest shareholders and a great supporter of us and of the incubator model more generally. We attend his conference in Boca Raton every year, and I'm sure that there are people on this call who we've met through that. And he describes us as a kind of merchant mining bank. Now, that's a great description, because what that really refers to is this point about the optimization of capital. Shareholders entrust me with a certain amount of shareholders' funds, and it is my job to enhance that as much as we can with good investments, good processes, and good crystallization events. And we can show you on this schematic here how we do that. So we've got a highly experienced corporate and technical team who between them have made a number of discoveries across a number of commodities and in various jurisdictions. But it's important to understand that it's not just about the geology. It's not just about the metallurgy either. It's certainly not just about the finance function. It's about all of those components all working together in sync to make this model work. This is not a typical junior mining company or junior exploration company with one or maybe two assets. We've got multiple assets over multiple geographies. And in order to maximize the opportunity for our shareholders, all of those components have to work together in synchronization. And that is a key part of what our board delivers and what our management team delivers, is that harmonized management and operational structure. So that is an important aspect which I would like, I think, hopefully shareholders to grasp, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that. Looking at where the the geographical spread of the business is. So I mentioned North America and Canada. So I mean, we have Nevada represented here. We've actually exited that position now, but it's on the map because I want to demonstrate where we have been successful. We have obviously the Canadian uranium assets you can see there, Saudi Arabia and Oman, Botswana, and Western Australia. So these are all high quality mining and exploration jurisdictions, which are prospective for a vast array of critical metals. Now, just to go into a little bit more detail in the projects, one of the things we're very excited to talk about is our assets or our opportunity in what we call the Arabian Shield through our subsidiary Power Arabia. So essentially what we're doing here is bringing our successful project incubator model to Saudi Arabia and Oman through that subsidiary. At the moment, we are talking to potential joint venture partners to develop that portfolio. And over time, I think there is going to be a very, very exciting crystallization event, which could take the form of an IPO, could take another form, we don't yet know. But I think the main thing here is the very high degree of prospectivity that exists in that region, where we already have several major earn-in agreements, and where we are at the moment an active exploration program underway in Oman and also in Saudi Arabia. And we've put out a lot of information on that. There's more to come, and again, it's something I'd be happy to answer questions on if that's of interest. So to sort of summarize that, to give you an idea of some of the assets that have been in and out of the portfolio, if you like, we've talked about Guardian, we've talked about the Fermi exploration. We've also disposed of a series of gold assets in Victoria in Australia. We've IPO'd First Development Resources, as I mentioned, and we've exited positions in Kavango Resources, New Horizon Metals. So it's a fairly complex portfolio, but the overriding principle is that we acquire assets, we develop and crystallize those, and then we seek to exit for value. Guardian, we talked about at a high level of what we've achieved there, but I think it's important because people will know this, that Guardian is a very, very high quality collection of assets. I beg your pardon, a very high quality collection of assets focused principally on tungsten, but with the possibility of other assets, as you can see there, copper, lithium, gold, lead and zinc in addition. Fermi, there is more detail here. I'm just conscious of time, so I think we won't sort of go through in detail the collection of assets there, but to give you an idea of the scale, these are the assets that we have within that joint venture, and where we are seeking active exploration. And this is quite a large scale project with a big exploration budget. We believe this is the second largest exploration budget going into the Athabasca at the moment. And we are naturally, I'm very hopeful that we're going to have some good success, particularly with the macro backdrop of the uranium price. FDR I mentioned earlier on, which is projects, or formerly our projects, now FDR shareholders projects in Western Australia and the Northern Territory. That's a recent IPO and is highly prospective. Copper gold, as I mentioned, but also uranium and rare earths in the north of the country. Now, I don't want to dwell too much on this because we've got a lot to get through in the time, but there's a recent investment we've made, which was announced a few weeks ago, which is called Mine Starters. Now, this is something slightly different for us. If you go back to the point I made earlier about being a mining merchant bank in Rick Rule's estimation, what Mine Starters is talking about is a new era of mining finance, which gives us a fintech dimension to that mining merchant bank model. At the moment, we've taken a 35% interest with the option to go up to 49%. Now, this is a little bit different, and there's a lot of detail here, which there's too much really to get through in a short call, but I'm very happy to follow up with any investors who want to drill deeper into this. But Mine Starters is a tokenized solution for exploration investment. So what we're talking about with Mine Starters is producing an institutional grade blockchain-enabled decentralized finance, or DeFi, tokenized platform that will give compliant, liquid, and diversified investment to early-stage mining ventures. Now, that's a very wordy sentence, I realize, with a lot going in there. But what we're talking about here is a real-world asset token, whereby token investors can get fractional ownership of mining projects through this platform, which is operating on-chain and in DeFi structure. So it's very similar in essence to what we do already, which is to say we have a curated portfolio of assets, which at the moment is represented by an equity, by a share, POWMF Resources. What Mine Starters is going to do is essentially the same thing, but it is going to access a much, much bigger pool of capital through what is an extremely fast-growing part of the cryptocurrency universe, the so-called RWA asset class. Now, this is a bridge between a world we currently occupy and a much more modern and blockchain-enabled world, but with a far greater pool of capital than has hitherto been available to us. We've acquired 35% via a £1 million investment. We have an option subject to various milestone completions to go up to 49%. And it's going to be a very exciting source of growth and news for our investors, and one that we will be talking about a lot going forward, and a very strong enhancement of our business model. This gives you some information on how it works. So an investor will buy a Mine Starters tokens. Those funds from the token will go into a secure treasury, which will fund multiple mining projects, and which will ultimately return through royalties, equity streams, debt instruments, and other income sources to the token holders. And those tokens will ultimately be, in order to keep the supply scarce, we will seek to buy back or burn the tokens to create a strong price dynamic for the token holders. Now, we can talk a lot more about that, but I would just want to sort of get through a little bit more of the portfolio and then maybe open for questions. So Power Arabia we talked about at the beginning, which is about the Vision 2030 and Vision 2040 in Saudi Arabia and Oman, respectively, where we have a substantial majority interest, 82.3%. We have 4 major earning agreements already signed, and we are planning through Power Arabia to be one of the dominant exploration leaders in the region. And we've already been a number of times to the Future Minerals Forum conference, where we've met with government officials and we've met with license holders, and we've been strongly building partnerships and assets, and this is going to be a major part of our value going forward. A smaller business in our portfolio is GSA Environmental, which is a rare earth, which is a critical metal extraction business from waste. Now, this is the motivation for investing in this was principally through our moves into Saudi Arabia and Oman, where there is a strong desire to process waste for metals and to provide technological solution to the environmental problems which are posed by toxic metals and waste products. And this is a business which is performing very well and which is achieving a lot of interest from Saudi Arabia, but also outside as well. We have a lot of potential business outside the region, and that will be again a very exciting source of growth for us. So just to talk a little bit more about some of the other assets, we have a potential district scale asset in Botswana called Malopo Farms, where we have an 87.7% interest and where we are actively seeking a joint venture partner at the moment to help fund what could be, well, will be a very widespread and an exciting exploration program. There's more detail on the progress we've made there, which I don't want to dwell on at the moment in the interest of time, but again, happy to answer questions and follow up. There's a lot of information about this on our website and in our public releases. Tati Greenstone Belt, also very interesting gold asset in also Botswana, where we have a joint venture agreement with a resource investor to do some further exploration on that, and where there will be some more news going forward, but a highly prospective asset there as well. Talking a little bit about who runs the company, we've got a very experienced board of directors, myself as chief executive, but a very strong board who obviously oversee the strategy, help me to deliver our objectives to shareholders, and have a wealth of experience both within the resource sector, but also in other areas. So we have strong custodians of shareholders' funds. Looking at how the business is owned, those numbers that you see, they're the large numbers in the teens, typically are represented by smaller retail investors through those well-known investor platforms. So Interactive Investor Services, Hargreaves Lansdown, Fidakos, Jarvis, AJ Bell are all aggregated holdings of various investors. Now, what this means is that we have no sort of dominant shareholder at the moment. We have a very broad spread of investors. It's a very liquid share. We have two large individual investors, Rick Rule, who I mentioned, and Pure Bod Limited, which is a very high net worth UK-based investor. And I'm myself on the list as a director. I've bought all of those shares from scratch with my own money. Those have not been given to me. They've all been bought by me, as is the case with the other directors. So we've got skin in the game, and we're aligned with shareholders on our objectives to make great returns. So to summarize and to possibly open for some questions, we're focused on metals exploration. So through a strategic business model, we're incubating metal exploration and projects. We've got 10 key commodities across energy, base, and precious metals. That is global in 10 different jurisdictions. We have the largest London-listed uranium portfolio in the Athabasca Basin, which is the world's premier uranium district. And we have a number of and more broadly in the portfolio, a strong focus on critical metals, many of which are on the US's critical metals list. So what we're seeking to do is to create shareholder value through exploration, joint venture, IPO, and disposal. So the entire capital chain. We've had a lot of success doing that, most recently with Guardian, with Fermi, with FDR. Going forward, we're looking to do the same again with Power Arabia and through our Minestarters investment, using the tokenized platform to bring in more, bigger, better projects with a much more liquid capital base. So that's the summary. There are contact details at the end here. Very happy to follow up with any questions. I'm very happy to take questions offline through those channels. We're always available to speak to investors and to answer any queries that anybody may have. So with that, I think I've left almost precise 5 minutes to answer any questions. So with that, I'm happy to open the floor. If there are no questions at this time, I'm very happy to conclude the presentation there and follow up offline if anybody would like to raise any specific questions or wants to talk about anything to do with the model or the assets. Very happy to take that at any time, and want to thank everybody for attending and for your interest in Power Metal Resources, and very best of luck with the conference and with the other very, very interesting companies that are also being represented here.